you are Bumi, a daughter of God. And and that my identity was centered on your name is Bumi and you are
Mm.
a daughter of God. And that I needed to lean into that identity more than the title that I had built my life around. Even when I went from single to married, I remember when people would initially sort of say, oh, Mrs. Odua. I remember I think there was once where someone said Mrs. Odua, and it took me a while to realize they were talking to me. Because I was so used to being Miss Abuaba. So it was like,
Mm.
okay,
I can relate.
So it was like that thing caught me out initially. And even like my documents, my passport, everything was still in my maiden name, all of that. So it was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but that shift for me, the journey of evolving into who you are in the season that you find yourself, definitely probably was the biggest shift happened with leaving work because I had worked there for at that point, going on almost 10 years. I had built a career, I had built a life,
Wow.
I had like a career path that I was following. So for him to say, leave it all behind and walk away, and then not tell me what I was going to do next,
What you are going to do next?
it
Wow,
was probably the biggest
that's
shock.
a tough one.
It literally shook the foundations of what I had built up. And that is what kind of also helped me. And what also helped me in that season was also I was becoming a mom. So when he said I was going to leave, and then, but he told me like 2 or 3 years in advance of leaving. And
Okay.
when he told me I was going, when God told me I was going to leave and didn't quite say where I was going, and then I said, okay, so how am I going to leave? Because I'm like a star girl where I work. People know me in my organization, in an organization of 10,000 people. And yet, amongst those 10,000, when they call your name is recognized by so many.
He's ringing a bell. Mm.
Exactly. It's like, where do you want me to go? Like, how do we unpack this? And I remember he just saying, be patient, I'll show you how it will all transition. And I had struggled to conceive. So it, even my boss at the time said it was a no-brainer to her that knowing I had had fertility challenges and then now conceiving, she said she kind of suspected that I would not come back to work just because she thought
Mm.
this is too precious to her for her to just come back as normal, even though she's like
Yeah.
a star girl and everything. And that whole transition then helped me in my journey in terms of, okay, I now need to be comfortable enough to, when people ask me, so what do you do? To say, well, I'm still working it out. So I'm still trying. And coming from a Nigerian background where achievement is such a big thing, especially
Yeah.
career achievement for women, is such a big thing. It was very uncomfortable to be able to say, this is who I am now. And I remember even for a long time, people would call me coach this and people gave me titles just based on the work I was doing with singles. And even then I was always uncomfortable because I couldn't take on a title that was not mine. And it was
Mm.
one of the lessons I had to learn in that season that no matter what people were calling me, because they had to, human beings have to have a name for everything. We have to be able to name
Yeah.
things. And there's nothing wrong with naming, but for anyone who's going through an evolution, if you don't name it, people will name it for you.
Yeah.
So for me, I had to then start saying, you know what, I'm a teacher, I'm a relationship. I had to give them something that was from me rather than what people said they wanted it to be. And in terms of even my evolution from single to married and how I've been able to continue doing it with children, the truth is that for me, the work that I do is a calling. And so it's foundational. It has become like the rock upon which I stand. Even though there have been
Okay.
iterations in the way that the work is done, even though there have been slight changes and all of that, and there has been even an evolving on the journey, one thing has been certain is that I've always loved relationships. So even before I got married, I was where my husband and I actually met. We met in the singles ministry, like the ones actively serving
Okay.
other single people. And that wasn't the first time. I had always loved anything that had to do with single people and relationships and love. And so, even only in hindsight, did I look back and think that it's a no-brainer that this is where you would find yourself in the end. Like I was the friend that all my friends came to for relationship advice, even
Deep advice.
married. And I was like, it's really funny that people would come to me for relationship advice, considering that I was not married, but everybody just thought I knew the
A lot.
answer. I knew a lot at that time. And so even the mentoring and teaching and helping singles actually kicked in shortly after I got married. I literally got married early, and
Wow.
6 months in, I started feeling uncomfortable. And I was thinking, okay, why am I feeling uncomfortable? So this is where God started talking to me about leaving work. But then I went and did coaching, and I said, okay, I went and spoke to a coach at the time, and I did a mastermind with this lady in America, and she asked a question. And she said, if money was not your problem, and you had all the money in the world, you didn't have to worry about your bills, you didn't have to worry about any of your finances, your life is sorted, and you just have to work, what would you do? And without even thinking, I tell people that I didn't think it just popped out of my mouth. I said, oh, I will help single women so that they wouldn't make the silly mistakes I used to make. And I was, when you're almost trying to
Wow.
cover your mouth to say, where did that come from? Like, can we take it back? you know? So it's no surprise that 7, 8 years down the line, I'm still here telling single women, what are you doing? Why are you doing it like that? Don't do it like that. Do it like this. Because it has always been something I've wanted to do. Have there been seasons that have tested that? Yes. Don't get me wrong. There have been seasons, especially like even just initially getting into motherhood and knowing that I had to look after another human being. And yet there was still this
Yeah.
strong pull to help single people, to talk to them, to do live sessions. I remember I would do live sessions and I was having my bump in front of me and stuff like that, just because it was like, I still want to do this
This
thing.
thing.
But that the evolution has, yes, there has been growth and there has been iteration, but the foundation hasn't changed because it has been centered on what I've been called to do as a person, whether that is to singles or to even married women, all of that. That core message of helping women to become whole and complete and be who God wants them to be on their journey to marriage and even in marriage. That message hasn't changed. That calling hasn't changed, at least not for now. But then, as the Bible says, we know in part and we prophesy in part. For what I know
Yeah.
up to this point in time, and in terms of what I see for the future, this is where He has me. If tomorrow He says, let's go and do something else, then we do another,
You're good to go.
and we go and do something else.
I think that's very, very, very insightful in terms of it's not just work for you, it's a calling as well. And so you know that okay, I'm not just doing this because it's something that God has told me to do. And so what I would say is you mentioned the fact that it took you a while to understand and coming to the fact that you are God's own before anything. How were you able to come into that understanding of your identity without like the traditional milestones? Like you mentioned achievements, Africa. Wanting to, how were you able to, what was the process like for you basically?
Honestly, the process was biblical. I will tell you that for a fact because I'm a big Bible girl. So I literally tell people that I live from the word out. And when I say that, people look at me funny, like, what do you mean? I mean, I literally live the word and I think, okay, so what have I seen in the word? And I tell people that I think in the word. So let me explain. Someone can ask me a question, and immediately they ask me the question, my mind is already going through almost like flipping Bible pages. I'm
Like a
flipping
Bible
Bible
verse?
pages, going through Bible, but literally Bible books saying, where's the answer to this question? And my process was always biblical in terms of it was always word centered. So, what did I see? In the journey to marriage, it started on the journey to marriage, but obviously, even on that journey, there's times where you come to a higher level of self-awareness. So I
Yeah.
remember going to a particular women's conference in the church I used to attend at the time, and they talked about, there was a lady that came, a white lady, I can't even tell you her name right now, but I remember that there were 3 words that she spoke that day that kind of started making me think about who I was as a person. The first one was, I am chosen, I am loved, and I am purposed. And it was all centered on John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that he loves me so much. And he loves me for me. He doesn't love me for anything else but myself. Like, and I tell people that even that knowledge has been heightened for me, in that I've now even gone further and seen where God said of Jesus when Jesus was baptized, saying, "This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased." But it's really early on. It's just at his baptism. He hadn't healed anyone. He didn't preach any message. So literally, it was all about identity, and the identity being that he's my child. And so I started to lean
without him doing anything.
without him doing anything. He hadn't performed miracles for us. There were no miracles, signs, and wonders. There was no ministry in and of itself. But yeah, God said, "This is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased." And that struck me, that God wants me to do things for him, because it says he has created us anew in Christ Jesus for good works. He wants me to do something, but he wants me to be centered in being his child first. Because it is, when Jesus would talk, he would say things like, "It is whatever I see my father doing," meaning it is all about what my relationship with my father is. And that season, especially my single season, I tell women that my single season was a time to grow my relationship with God, settle into my relationship as a child, which is why I used to tell people, I remember going to my premarital class, and they were talking about something. And I remember saying, "Oh no, but God calls me baby girl." And people looked at me funny, thinking, "What do you mean?" I said, "But God calls me baby girl." And when we're talking, he says, "Baby girl, this." I said, "Well, for me also was because I lost my earthly father on my just before my 30th birthday. And I remember that the void of not having a father making me pressing into that relationship, so much so that I could then be able to build myself on my father's love, a heavenly father's love, rather than just an earthly father's love. Not only was it word centered, but also I did things that people know about and people have even tried doing, but have never thought to then take it on as part of who they are. So I did things like I did strengths finders. So at work, we had opportunities to learn our strengths, because I was sort of like mid-level at that point in time, so like middle management. And we did test personality tests. We did the Gallup Strength Finder. We did the Myers-Briggs test. And I remember that the minute I got the results and I saw them, it was like as though they had described me on the paper. Like, even though it was just me answering questions, there was just this awareness that, oh my God, this is so true, because this is exactly how I think and act. And so rather than being focused on what I do, I was now leaning more into, who am I? Who am I in terms of, obviously, as a child of God? Who am I in terms of what I'm good at? What comes to me naturally? Who am I in terms of my personality? What does my personality look like? What does it thrive in? We joke about how we have such a social butterfly for a daughter, and people ask us, where does she get it from? And my husband says, definitely not from her mother. And people laugh and say, but she's out there, she's speaking, she's talking. And I say, yes. But when I'm done, I'm just like, okay, we're done now. Don't have to talk to anyone again. I talk to people on my own terms and conditions now, But it was that pressing into that understanding and that awareness of what I was gifted at. And even then taking feedback from people in terms of how I showed up in the world based on those qualities, based on my values. I now started sitting down thinking, what matters to me? What is fundamentally important to me as a person? Those things became a rock for me and basically formed my identity, so that even when I then come to a title, I bring all of that into the title. I bring all of that into the role that I'm doing at that point in time. I know that the role requires of me, but more than just requiring of me, I come to that role as my full self. But that's because I've taken time to learn my full self, and to learn my full self even in the seasons that I find myself in. So, for example, before I had kids, if you had said to me, will you go back to work full time? 100%. The minute I got pregnant, I was thinking, absolutely not. But that was an awareness that I have this life growing in me, and I actually want to spend time with her. And then even when we're like, okay, so going back to work, and what does that look like? It looks like a job that does not require me to be in an office 9 to 5 all the time. And so I work fully remote from home. I work in a job that's flexible enough that allows me to do things like school run and picking my kids up and going to, a show. I always say that I don't know why our kids' school puts shows at like 2 o'clock.
Yeah, they do.
Like, why do you want to do that? But then I'm just, I had already prepared myself for that by finding a role that allows that level of flexibility so I can go and show up for my child. And she won't be like, oh, well, mommy is not here, daddy's not here, all of those kind of things. All of that happened, but it came from literally sitting with who I was in terms of my identity. And that my identity was first grounded in I'm Abba's daughter. And then Abba's daughter that is introverted or extroverted. And it then over evolves from there in terms of what else
Yeah.
I carry as a person.
Yeah, I think that was very insightful because I think I realized in like these days, I used to be someone who likes to sit with myself a lot. I think as I became a mother, I think that has changed a bit because I feel like, "Oh, you're sitting down with yourself too much. Are you sure there's no problem?" But I've learned the gold of self-reflection in terms
Mm,
of it's very important that you're not just living life on the go in terms of, oh, you're just doing, but in terms of reflecting on your decisions, reflecting on, okay, why do I think like this?
mm,
Okay, what's informing my decision?
mm.
And it's been so powerful because I mean it begins to reveal certain things that you you never would have thought, and so you're able to trace this thing. Okay, I'm thinking like this because I mean this is what I've seen while growing
Yeah,
up, or
yeah,
okay, I made this personality change because of something someone said to me at a
mm,
particular point in time,
yeah,
and all of that. And I think for mothers the issue, I don't know, but for me, I feel like our self-reflection is sometimes hindered by the busyness of our responsibilities. I mean, we're
mm,
trying to do so much,
yeah.
and so people hardly have the time to self-reflect. So
Well,
I think it's
you have to carve that time for yourself. Your children deserve the best of you. And you can't give
mm,
them the best of you if you don't spend time in self-reflection. Even if it's just to know who you are as a person in the season that you find yourself. So in the season that I find myself, I'm a mom. I'm working for someone. I'm building a business. I'm leading people in ministry. I'm a friend. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a wife. You have all these things, but there are times where you have to sit down and say to yourself, okay, in all of these things, which one can I outsource? Because I'm a homekeeper. I'm responsible for the home. But I'm sorry, I will not be responsible for cleaning the home. And by taking that away, guess what? By removing that and getting someone to come and clean my house means I can sit with my son when he says, Mommy, come and sit with me. I want you to watch Hot Wheels with me. I bought
mm,
back my time, but it was
yeah.
from self-reflection and knowing what was important to me, that I want to be present. My children know that mommy spends a lot of time talking to people on her computer, but does not mean that they should not get me because I'm talking to people on my computer. So
Mm,
where do I free up that time? And I had to learn this, and I remember my husband's cousin at my bridal shower saying to me then, and I didn't fully appreciate her words until I had children. She said, may you live out your life based on the season that you find yourself in.
mm.
And I didn't
That's
fully
actually
know,
deep.
I didn't fully know what she meant. But she was a mom of two already. So she was like, I
It was
assure
ahead of time.
may you live out. And for a lot of us as moms, the truth is that yes, life is life thing. Motherhood is a lot of work. I I, I more than I understand it. We all understand it as moms on this conversation. But the truth is that you cannot give your best as a mom if you don't know who you are as a woman. I'm not talking about who you are as a wife. I remember I used to ask women, who are you without the title? Especially I remember then when, and I'm going to show my age now, when we had BlackBerry Messenger and people their status and put their names and used to give themselves names. And even now, people still do it. I see it all the time on social media. A woman gets married and immediately she changes her thing to Mrs. This. And I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
Mrs. A.
who are you if you're not Mrs. A? Like,
Hmm.
because those things actually play on us in terms of how we then even engage. If, for example, she's Mrs. A, but she's married to Mr. A, who's a horrible human being, and she knows that she needs to leave Mr. A, but she has built her identity on being Mrs. A. She will stay as Mrs. A, even though she should not be Mrs. A.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But self reflection allows you to center yourself on who you really are. This is who I am. I'm Bomi. My name is Bomi. I'm a gift from God. That's what my name means. And I had to tell myself, Bomi, every time you show up in the world, you are a gift to whoever is speaking to you. You're a gift to whoever encounters you. You're a blessing. But why am I a blessing? Because I have the spirit of wisdom. I am a wise woman. My words are kind and gracious. Even when I'm having a bad day, I go for a walk so that I can recenter myself in who I am. When life becomes overwhelming, I take a walk. As a mom, you will say, well, where's the time? Make the time. If it means that when the baby is, if, for example, I'll give an example of kind of things I did that kind of helped me to stay grounded in who I was, especially as I transitioned into motherhood. For example, yes, I've been a Christian, I've centered myself as I know who I am before that. I'm now married, I'm a wife. But then how do I still stay centered in my identity and my relationship with God? I would be breastfeeding. I would literally pick up my phone and I'd be reading my Bible as I was breastfeeding. I was making time. Or as James Clear says, I was habit stacking, meaning that I was doing two things. I was doing something I needed to do. I needed to feed my baby, but I knew I also needed to read my Bible. So I stacked the two activities together. I tell people that I spent so many days just reading my Bible, reading articles, listening to courses, doing things that helped me for me, even though I had, I remember doing DDK's VCAP. I was the first cohort of VCAP. And I started VCAP with my son as a baby. And people said, how is that even possible? I said, because what matters to me is that I need to do what God asked me to do. Because what if I didn't have children? Would I say that the totality of my life is still just everything else? There are people that need what I carry within me. There are people that need the experience I have from waiting for marriage for over 10 years. There's lives that want what I carry. And I can't say I'm not going to spend time in quietness. In Bible says, in quietness and trust shall be your strength. Like quietness is actually a mother's secret weapon. Because it is in quietness that God can talk to you.
You need it.
And if you are not a man of faith, it is in quietness that you can even give yourself time to say, what is working well and what isn't working well in my home and with my kids? It's in quietness. You can't do that with noise.
When you're always busy.
You can't be, that's why we can't afford to always be busy. Even if all you give yourself is 15 minutes before you close your eyes, give yourself those 15 minutes. If it means that you sit quietly I know sometimes, obviously, depending on the season, if you're a new mom, it's hard. You're putting on 2 or 3 hours sleep at a stretch. It's hard. But that's where we lean into community. We lean into where we can find support. We lean into outsourcing where we can't find support. Leaning into the spouse that you have, because sometimes it's not that your spouse wants to be ignorant or doesn't want to help you.
Yeah, the one not
Doesn't just
talking.
know how he needs to fit into the whole thing, because it's suddenly you and this baby, and then every time he wants to carry the baby, you're like, no, 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 that's not how you do the nappy. That's not how you feed the baby. And he's like, okay, so maybe I shouldn't do anything and I should just be. It's not because he wants to be
Let
weak.
me just look.
Let me just sit and look, or my help is not needed here.
Mm.
So that's where we lean into those things. But can I say, you cannot afford not to get quiet as a mom.
Yeah.
You need it for yourself, and your children need it of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, initially, I found out that so I wake up like around the time when my son was much younger. I used to wake up like, I just wake up when he wakes up because like I'm already tired and all of that. But now I've switched to my 9 to 5 in terms of I'm doing my internship here in Rwanda. And I've just realized that the days I wake up early to just have those moments with God and myself are my best days.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you've had some time to calibrate, you've had some time
Yes.
to commit yourself to God and all of that. And it just gives you that fortitude, I mean,
Mhm.
to face the whole day than just waking up when he wakes up and you're like, oh my God, where do I
Like the
start
day has
from?
already started before it has started when you wake
Yeah,
up like that.
yeah. So I think, yeah, that self-reflection, that quietness is really something that. But I want to also ask you, for someone who probably has lost herself in motherhood,
Mm,
mistakenly or on one way or the other, they've just lost themselves in terms of they're just struggling to find their feet. I mean, they've
mm,
been swallowed in the. How do they come out of that? In terms of what steps can they take to come back to being on, how do I call it? An LD, yeah, an LD space where you're not just thinking of yourself as a mother, but you're seeing yourself as an individual,
mm.
someone that has purpose, someone that has good works that God has told you to do, and all of that. How do they retrace their steps?
It first starts from acknowledging where you are, acknowledging where you are in terms of, okay, what does my life look like right now? And
Mm,
you used a keyword where maybe they're aware that there's good works that God has for them, or they already know that for example, let's say you kind of have an idea of what you're supposed to be doing. I always say that the first step to anything is an acknowledgement and an awareness of where you are. So you have to
mm,
acknowledge that, okay, this is where I find myself. I find myself in a state of overwhelm. I find myself in a state of confusion. I find myself in a state where I lack clarity. I find myself in a state where I am constantly angry. I tell
mm,
people that, let me give you an insight into that one I just said, that when I'm crankier with my family for an extended period of time is usually a sign to me as a person, but this has come from self-awareness and self-reflection. It's a sign to me that I have not expressed the God in me in terms of what he has asked me to do. And I have not
mm,
allowed him to give me almost like himself. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I've not allowed my relationship with him to fill me up, and I've not allowed the what the Bible calls out of your belly shall flow rivers of
no
living.
reverse over time. To
The
flow
living
to
water
other
has to
people.
come out of me. And people might say, well, but the living water should flow to your family. I say, yes. But remember that I am first God's child before
Mm-hmm.
who I am in my family. If I don't even work on that part, I will always show up in a
Mm,
slightly awkward way, a slightly tetchy way, a slightly crankier way as a mom and as a wife. And so, first step is acknowledging where you are, then acknowledging where you started from, especially for the one that maybe was already on a purpose journey. Where you are not on a purpose journey, acknowledging or taking time, which is why I said reflection is important. Taking time to say, okay, what do I want out of life going forward?
mm.
Because even a lost person knows that they want to find their way.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter how overwhelmed we all are, we know. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
be, you want to be calmer. What does karma look like for you? What does peaceful look like for you? What does patience look like for you? That's where you start to do that's why the self-reflection bit is almost like it's twofold. In terms of it helps you to take stock first, but then it also gives you an opportunity to look forward.
Yeah, to something.
To say, okay, this is what I want to now attain towards. So for the woman who has lost herself, what does finding yourself look like? And this is not just about it's about the self-care, the skin this, and no, 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 no. What does
How to
truth,
do that inner work.
what does the inner bit look like? What
Yeah.
does a calmer, more peaceful you look like? What does a fruitful, productive you look like? You might be surprised that a calmer you is just the fact that your days don't end with your kids screaming at you at 10 p.m. and that a calmer you is kids that have gone to bed at 8. But that's where you sit and look forward and say, okay, what do I want? And then the next step, once you've acknowledged and then you've started looking at, okay, what do I want to achieve next? Is then thinking, how do I make that happen? Okay, my kids are taking over my life. How do I reclaim part of who I am?
Back myself.
How do I reclaim back myself? I will tell the kids, especially if they're older and they understand. As I said, it all depends on your season and where you find yourself. I will tell my kids, Mommy, for 15 minutes, and with my children, I have it. Alexa, set timer for 15 minutes. For the next 15 minutes, nobody can come and find mommy. Did it take a while? Especially for the younger one who is still like, Mama, me. No. Mama, me. Noah, 15 minutes. Yeah, I just want to tell you something after 15 minutes. Obviously, if it's your kids are much younger, maybe it's a baby you're in that newborn phase, but that newborn phase has taken over the entirety of your life. If you're not a single parent, and I'm saying this with everyone,
Yeah.
if you're not a single parent and you have a spouse,
Yeah.
house your child for 30 minutes and take yourself away and go and rest. That might be even your next step. It doesn't have to be something big. It could be that, oh, before you became a mom, you liked having really nicely painted nails. Now you've become a mom, you don't even remember the last time you did your nails. Okay, plan it next 3 weeks, booking an appointment to do my nails. And I'm going to prep everything. I'm going to express breast milk or formula. I'm going to, I will have prepped what I need to prep so that when I go for that appointment, I know someone that I think when she did her thing, she even turned off her phone so nobody could reach her.
I can
Everybody
understand.
needs a bit of silence. And you shouldn't have to wait till your kids have left home to get it.
Yeah.
So don't let what has become your reality be the end of it all. There's a way forward. It just requires you to be intentional about whether or not you want that. But you first of all have to start with that awareness that this is what my reality looks like right now. This is where I want to be. This is where and I forgot to mention, for the woman who has been on a purpose journey, but motherhood has now taken over. And it feels like, oh my goodness, I abandoned God's work, I abandoned my purpose. Go back to the last thing that you did. Go back to where you were. You might find what I found sometimes is that in going back, especially going back to what got you started, it resparks something inside of you. And even if you're like, okay, I don't really feel connected to this, take the lessons from whatever you started with and then use to begin to craft.
Next journey.
If you're a believer, go to the source. Okay, Abba, I'm so sorry. Life got in the way. I apologize. That's what repentance is all about. It's not just about
Mm.
being sorrowful of heart. No, but it's an acknowledgement that, look, I messed up. I'm really
Yeah.
sorry, but I really want to move forward now. How do we move forward? What does that look like? Do you still want me to pick up what you gave me before? Or do you have a
Mhm.
fresh assignment for me? Does this look different now? You know, yeah, that's what I would do. And that's kind of things I have done on my journey when especially when life has got in the way of what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm. Yeah, I think that was really helpful because I feel like at every point in time, I think I was sharing with someone that when it comes to identity, I feel like with every season of your life, there's always like it comes in layer. I mean, you're single and then you become married. You
Mm,
have to address some certain layer. You become a mother. I mean, another another layer to address and all of that. And so sometimes it can actually be a lot. And so, yes, you mentioned self-care, making sure like you try as much as possible to get connected with yourself. Now, I want to ask another question as to people that deal with fear.
mm,
I think that has happened to me. Me trying to, so when I wanted to start my internship, I was so worried. I was so worried as to, okay, my son has always been with me.
mm,
I can't remember like dropping him with anybody because I don't
mm,
know anyone here in Rwanda. How is that new face? Because sometimes what holds us back is not necessarily because we have other things holding us. It's just that fear. We're
mm.
afraid of what can be, what cannot be, and all of that. And so I was very much afraid as to, oh, how do I how do I handle this? So how do you think someone should address that, especially coming from that place of fear as to, okay, I'm now in a new season. I know you mentioned, yes, going back to God, doing, I mean, reflection, but how do they get rid of fear and
Mm.
guilt? Because sometimes I can be at work sometimes and my mind is like, okay, is this boy okay? Is he all right?
Mm.
And then when I come back and then they're telling me, oh, he did this, he did that, and I'm feeling guilty as to I should have been around for this and all of that. So how do you deal with fear and guilt generally,
Okay, so how
especially
you
like with
deal?
motherhood?
Yeah. So how you deal with both of them is slightly different. So with the guilt one, we've also been conditioned to feel guilty. We've been conditioned
Mm,
that we're the only ones meant to raise our children. We've been conditioned that if we're not the ones raising them, then nobody else can do a good job. Heaven forbid that a mother is not here. Will that child not still be looked after? And that's
mm,
something that, yes, slightly morbid, but it's something to consider that that child will still be looked after. And so, if that's the case, they might not do it the way you want to do it, but will they do a good enough job? And that's where you do your due diligence to make sure that you find help so that you can let your child go and
mm-hmm.
put your child in their arms and know that they'll be okay. And you might have
And
to
they'll be fine.
talk to yourself and say, I will not feel guilty for the
Mm,
choices I'm having to make. Me sending my child to maybe daycare or nursery or a childminder or getting a nanny, I will not
mm-hmm.
see because where life has put me requires that I ask for help.
Mm,
It requires that we ask for help. And that means that we can't then let guilt stand in the way of, oh, I should have been here. The truth is you can't. And the earlier you make your peace with that,
better.
it's true. The minute you are, initially when I had to travel for work, I used to think, oh my gosh, will they be okay? And I went and came back and realized how good they were. I was just like, never again am I going to feel guilty. Never, never, you know. And I've traveled for work a lot more times since then, since that first trip where I left both of them, and nobody died. They did quite well. The last trip that I did, which was only last month, they had even like a food timetable. They created their own food timetable and worked it out with them.
Wow.
No guilt. I had zero guilt. Zero. And you would think, oh my God, does that mean I don't love my kids? I absolutely love my kids, but I'm also not going to let mom guilt rule over my life. It's just not what, it's not just what I want to have as part of my identity as a mother. I'm a mother, yes, but I'm also a woman. I'm a gift to people. And my kids get to share that with me. In fact, my daughter will be like, oh, do you know my mom is an author? Imagine if I was feeling guilty. I would never have written,
You wouldn't have done that.
you know, because I'd have been spending more of my time. And I wrote that book in the throes of newborn phase, like
Wow.
pregnancy and newborn phase. So the point I'm trying to make is you can't let guilt rule your life. It's not worth it in the long run. Second thing I would say about guilt is put systems and structures in place that allow you to get the reassurance that you need. So, for example, this nursery that my son went to, we had daily reports.
Okay.
Depending on where you are, they have video. You can see video of the child in the nursery at the childminder. Like you can do the work to ensure that you have the evidence that you need that your child is being looked after properly. Where you are not comfortable, put, speak up. I don't like what I've seen. My child is developing a this, whatever it is. And you can't say, oh, well, because my child now has a rash, it's my fault. I shouldn't have left them. But the world has moved on from moms being stay-at-home moms all the time. Not everyone has the luxury of being a stay-at-home mom. And if a woman
Yeah.
still has to go to work, then somebody has to look after her child while she is working. Then the responsibility we have as mothers is to make sure that we find the best person possible
So,
to look.
yeah. To take care of our child.
So that's how at least that's how I've dealt with guilt in terms of overcoming mom guilt. And like I said, I just personally chosen that mom guilt is just not part of my identity. It's just not who I'm going to be. I'm not going to let it be. Are there days I feel bad? Yes. For example, I have a work meeting because my team and I don't see each other very often. We have a work meeting coming up, and it happens to fall on the first day my son is starting school.
Oh.
Because we don't, our meetings are like maybe 2 or 3 a year. Because it's such a few and far between thing, it's not something I can say, oh, well, I'm not going. So what's the workaround? Daddy, please, I will do FaceTime with you when you're dropping him off. Please do loads of videos. And I had the experience of being there for the first child. It's not like I didn't have that experience. I've had one experience. And I have to just
Yeah.
be peace with the fact that this time I couldn't be there on the first day, but I'm going to hear all about it. He's going to give me all the feedback about what he did, who he made friends with, and all of that. And I'll be okay. And that's my inner work. That's why it's my own inner work.
Yeah.
In terms of fear. So fear is the opposite of, in quotes, the opposite of faith in terms of fear comes to make you feel like something is lacking, something is missing, I don't know this. Because if you think about the fear that we experience, it's a fear usually of, I don't know what's going to happen next, or this is the worst case scenario. My
Yeah.
my way of dealing with fear, first of all, obviously, is building up my faith. So building up my belief about what is true. And then, so if, for example, I remember the fear of not having kids. My response to that fear was speaking that I would have kids, affirming that I would have kids. And I'm not just talking about one-off affirmations, consistently affirming till the day I conceived that I would have kids. And then during pregnancy, affirming that I would carry to full term, even when I would. And then even when when my cervix opened at 22 weeks and it looked like I was going to miscarry at that point in time, affirming again that no, I carry a child to full term. Was there fear? Yes. But did I have to counter that fear with my belief system? Yes. because fear
Yeah.
literally moves in the face of belief. And then
Mm.
not only does it move in the face of what you believe, it moves in the face of your actions. So my mindset is, and it's not
Yeah.
always perfect sometimes. Like there are times when it still catches me out and I have to remind myself of what I need to do. But what's the worst that can happen?
Mm.
I'll take this step, but what's the worst that can happen? Most times, sometimes the reason we don't step out is because we're afraid.
Yeah.
Afraid, I'm not sure it will play out. Well, you won't know. Plus, do you want to live with regret?
Mm-hmm. I never did
You're afraid
what
of the
you
fact
had in
that
mind.
you could have 20 or 30 years down the line, you would look back and wish you had done better in this season. Not even 20 years, 5 years down the line.
5 years.
5 years. You'll be amazed that 5 years is not that long. Can't you remember COVID? That
Mm-hmm.
was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's how quickly 5 years has gone. So imagine if there were things that you needed to do in 2020 that you didn't do, that you now sit in 2024 and you're looking back thinking, oh my goodness.
Mm.
That's what fear does. Fear holds you back from experiencing the fullness of life you're supposed to experience. And we have to then take a stand and say, you know what? I'm going to move. One of the phrases I really love comes from a lady called Joyce Meyer. And she had a popular phrase saying, do it afraid.
Yeah.
I heard it. I'm talking this phrase, I've been hearing it from Joyce Meyer easily 15 years now. Do it afraid.
Mm.
Like you're afraid, okay, but still do it anyway. Do whatever you need to do, but do it afraid. And what might happen, in fact, what often happens is that you do it and then realize that the fear was irrational. And the
Mm-hmm.
fear was
Most times.
that it had no foundation. But because fear is very
Mm.
good at masking things and painting a different picture, that's why you do it afraid.
Yeah.
You do it afraid. That's what I do with fear anyway, with fear and guilt.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a very great conversation. I've learned some things myself as to, especially when it comes to that fear or when it comes to guilt as well. I mean, it's something that sometimes it just comes, and I'm like, oh, okay, okay, okay. I mean, we'll figure it out. But I think you showed a better way. I mean, you showed a better way of dealing with it. One last question before you go. I know you mentioned, I mean, stay at home moms. And so now we're saying in the context of we that are career kind of people. But a lot of people that are stay at home moms, probably freelancers, or someone that, I mean, she's just starting from zero, trying to navigate her path, or someone who is trying to switch, because I think motherhood as well gives you that wake up call as to, okay, a 9 to 5, like a regular 9 to 5 might not be my thing.
Mm.
How do they navigate that as well?
Well, it depends on what they want because what they want determines what they do. So if,
Mm.
for example, you want to be a woman that's flexible. So, for example, I tell people that the role that I do now was an intentional choice. It was a choice to ensure that I was always home, I was always present. And maybe because I'm also introverted and I don't really like talking to people like that, it meant I wasn't talking to people. Like I can talk to you on the computer,
Okay.
have to physically have that physical interaction. That's just me as a person. But
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I wanted. I knew the kind of life I wanted to have. So my choice of a role, whether it be a career role, whether it be a business, whether it be a ministry, whatever it is that you want to do, is dependent on what you want. What kind of
Mm.
family life do you want? What kind of parenting life do you want? That automatically drives the actions because the actions are dependent on the vision.
Yeah.
If you don't have vision in terms of what you want, you will then settle for anything. It's why there are women who are working 9 to 5 and getting paid really, really well, but are absolutely miserable because it doesn't actually align with what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy to get paid well, and then but and it's when you're getting paid well, I know the struggle of how do I walk away from this.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's where you do the work to plan. Okay, you might need to have an exit strategy. So, okay, I'm not going to do this for another, I'll do this for another 2, 3 years, 3 to 5 years. And by year 5, this is where I want to be. And then
This is what I
every
want to do.
day,
Mm-hmm.
every month, every week, you're taking steps aligned with where you're trying to get to in year 5.
Mm.
If it's that you want to be a stay-at-home mom and that's the desire that you have, but you also want something on the side, then sit down and work it out. Okay, what do I actually want? And what will I have to do? And then if you have obviously a supportive spouse, discussing that, because then they might be able to take the pressure of saying, you know what, you don't need to work, you can stay at home. And then it becomes a joint decision that both of you are
Mm.
making, because that support is essential, especially if, for example, you're starting something from scratch and it's not going to be profitable on day one and it needs to be profitable
Mm-hmm.
on day 500 or something. And you need someone to still be your buffer, or you put in place the fact that, okay, like I said, for the one that maybe wants to transition out of 9 to 5 and wants to be a stay at home mom, begin to put aside the money every month. Okay, I'm setting aside £3,000, £5,000. And because I know that that's what is my base amount. And that requires you to sit down and work out how much you need.
Yeah.
Is that working out? Okay, I need to be able to do this, do this, do this, do this, and listing out all the different things that you need to do. You know that, okay, the base amount that I need to have in my account is 3,000. So every month,
Mm.
depending on how much you're earning, I'm going to put aside this amount. It's a thought process, but it's also a practical action.
Yeah.
But the thought process comes first. The vision comes before the action. What do you want? What you want determines how you then begin to craft and create your life.
Yeah. Clarity brings a lot of, I mean, it brings a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
Once you're clear about what you want, it's easier for you to now, to now find your path and take actions.
Exactly.
So, yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation and I enjoyed it. I mean, I gained a lot myself. And so, what will be your final words to people navigating identity shifts in motherhood? What would you tell a mom that is struggling with it?
Lean into the season that you find yourself. You are more likely to thrive if you actually align, because what you're doing when you lean into the season is that, like a person who is swimming in a stream, when you lean in, you're swimming with the flow of the stream. When you are not and you're still struggling, you're swimming against the current of the stream. So the essence is pay attention to the season you find yourself rather than trying to be who you were. You no longer are that person. That person no longer exists to some extent. That woman has served her purpose and she has moved on. And now you're
Mm.
in, you're in a different phase, you're in a different space. Lean into the space that you find yourself. Where you don't have knowledge, seek knowledge. Where you need to take time to decide for yourself what this space will look like for you. Now, almost, that thing, there's a Bible phrase that just came to mind, which was forget the former things. See, I am doing
Yeah,
in
a
Isaiah
new
40,
thing.
43, verse 18 to 19. It says, forget the former things. And there's a reason why they're telling you to forget, because if you keep holding on to the former things, you will keep doing this and you can't move properly looking backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You will stumble over yourself if you keep looking backward. So instead, look forward and say, okay, so this is where I find myself now in. Who do I want to be here? What will life look like for me? What would a great life look like for me here and now? Who do I want to be for my children? How do I want to show up going forward? And then lean into that and literally actively engage with the season that you find yourself in. You'll probably enjoy it a lot more than if you try holding on to the woman that you were before.
Yeah, very, 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 very wise. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you so much. I
welcome.
really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. God bless you. God renew your strength and grant you grace in all that you do. Thank you so much.
Amen.